Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, welcome Adam Lindstaedt,
Yep.
owner of the Poorhouse Record Hall and Music Shop, and Poorhouse Pressings. Very
Yep.
exciting. Welcome into a Rendezvous at the Forum. Very happy to have you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. Where do we dive in? Just at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Chicago, a suburb outside of Chicago. Lived there until I was. Are you from?
Yeah, which suburb?
Lake Zurich.
Huh?
Lake Zurich.
Yeah, I'm from Chicago Heights, South Chicago Heights.
Right on. Yeah, lived there. My whole family's there. Lived there through high school and moved to San Diego to go to college at San Diego State.
Nice.
Lived there for a few years. It was wonderful. Finished that up, and then I did online classes with Berklee College of Music from there while I was still in San Diego. It was the first year that they offered this music business management program.
So while you're in Chicago, are your parents into music, or where does the music come in?
I started playing. Let's see, I had a drum kit that we found in the garbage on the side of the road when I was probably like 5 or 6 years old. Had that for a few years, and then played cello in 3rd grade in the school orchestra, and then trumpet the next year, and then got back into the drums probably in 5th grade.
So you got the drum set in what, like 2nd grade? Then you were young. You found it. Do you have any siblings?
I have an older sister, but she was never a musician.
Did she hate it when you joined playing the drums, or did she?
It was a love-hate relationship. Everyone in the house, yeah. But everyone was very supportive. I mean, my dad built me a big drum stage to put in the garage, so like when water from snow and stuff would come in, it wouldn't get all screwed up. And
Nice.
we had a heater in there. We'd play all the time until the neighbors would call the cops at like 7:30 in the evening. And
What was the first time you were like, we're gonna record something, we're gonna have a little band in here?
We never actually recorded anything. It was more just
Jamming
friends jamming out. The first band was called Essence of Chaos.
Hey, I like that.
My friend, the guitar player, his aunt owned like this advertising company like in Philly or something, so she like had big banners and things made for us. So that was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. That's kind of just where things started.
Mm-hmm.
Played drums in various bands throughout high school, and once I got to college, played with a few bands here and there, but nothing ever very serious. I just smoked a lot of weed.
Yeah,
But,
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, I wouldn't be the only one.
San Diego's a great place for ambition to go to die. It's just so nice. Just sit around and don't do much and just enjoy the weather and the peaceful environment. But
Were you still living in San Diego when you started the Berklee program?
yeah, I was.
And
Yeah, so I was the type of person that just wanted to be done with school as fast as possible. And then I came across this program my senior year of college, and I was like, damn, that's perfect. Like, it talks about everything that you want to know. It's interactive in the sense that, I could have someone that was in the Iraq war at a current time, which I had someone in class through Berklee that was in active combat taking online music business classes. And he was part of this group, and then, a piano teacher from Canada, and this, percussionist from South Africa, and just get so many different perspectives on how people are just looking at music in general. It was just mind-blowing. I think that program was like 1.5 years long, and I got far more out of that than I did in the rest of my schooling combined.
Had you already kind of in San Diego, I guess, been doing some like more on the business side, or was that something you saw and you were like, this is something I want to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I was on the business. I've generally been on the business side. I was probably like 13 or 14 when I went to a show at the Metro in Chicago and walked in the building. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but it's just so ornate and all gilded and beautiful. And like when I walked in there, I was just like, holy crap! I don't know what this is, but I've got to be doing something around this. And pretty quickly, I'm like, venue. Like I need to open my own venue. And that's been the focus, ever since then. So like when I went through college and then the grad program, all the jobs I was working at throughout then, my first foray into working in the music business was for Red, which was a Sony distribution subsidiary in Chicago, and sent out CDs to record labels and stores and things like that, and would go around and make sure that rack levels were reported right in different stores and things like that, and things were being marketed properly. And then when I moved to San Diego, I met up with this guy from Chicago who ended up, you might know these places. Well, no, you're from Chicago, not San Diego. Sorry. But yeah, this guy, he owned 2 bars in San Diego, Blind Melons in Pacific Beach and Winston's in Ocean Beach.
Ocean Beach, beautiful. Hodad's over there. I've been to the.
Oh yeah, it's right across the street from Hodad's.
Okay.
Like right there. Yeah, used to spend a lot of time down there.
Yeah.
Especially at the dog beach. But yeah, and that guy, he was, dating some woman in the 90s and was missing the blues scene in Chicago and was going to move back. And she's like, why don't you stay here and open a blues club? And that's what Blind Melon started as in Pacific Beach. And then it eventually evolved over time to more of like a general music venue, kind of like the approach that we take at the Poorhouse. So I worked with him, his booking person, on festivals, like on club shows, up until I was 21. So I did that from like 18 until 20. And then I got a job at the Belly Up Tavern in Solana Beach. And they've since opened another one in Aspen. Great, incredible venue with 600 cap, just does cool stuff. Once did a benefit there, raising money. I forget the cause that it was raising for, but Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett played together in a 600 cap room. Which is,
That's when they had that song.
Yeah,
That's
that's
probably
when
when
they
they had
kept
that
the
song.
song.
Yeah,
I never understood that album. I don't understand why they did that together.
I don't know. I personally
happened
never heard
there?
it. I wasn't at the show, but it was one of those things. It was like, wow, you can do like some really cool, like high level stuff in small rooms that are just memorable, and people talked about it forever, and raised a shitload of money for charity in the process. And then I started working in, at a record label called Surf Dog, which was based out of northern San Diego. And what else was I doing? I started working at in theater at the Old Globe Theater, so like plays and things like that, doing house management and volunteer coordination stuff. And then we started a nonprofit when we lived in San Diego called Concert Cabs, and this was probably 2004 maybe. It was essentially like Uber.
Yeah,
like
pre-Uber.
The ride share was, we were giving free rides home from shows.
Oh.
And people would sign up, we'd link up, we'd find them after a show and drive them home.
Nice.
It was a way to encourage people to go out and be safe while doing it. It was a pain in the ass. At the end of the day, we were just driving people around in our own cars. And it was fun for a little bit, and then got old pretty quickly. And believe it or not, Mothers Against Drunk Driving were like coming after us real hard.
Really?
Like trying to shut us down, saying that we're encouraging excess. Kind of like the condom argument.
Mothers Against Drug
It's like abstinence over
Sounds like
being
mothers.
safe.
Sounds like mothers who aren't having a lot of fun.
Exactly.
And they're like inversely promoting drinking and driving.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're like, don't have any fun. Don't go outside. Stay at home and raise a family. And then spend time in the kitchen. And don't go out to shows. And look from your window at the shows that are happening in anger, like I do.
Yeah, that's the American way.
I had a couple of questions there. Well, one, maybe, I don't know if Lucas wanted to jump in on the jazz club idea. But I was just interested in terms of like the proximity to LA, and then the just the booking of jazz in terms of like how the approach to that, if there was like the local scene in San Diego, or if you guys were venturing further to get people, or just kind of Poorhouse, or like in the environment of like whoever is coming through on tour.
I'm not sure what you mean by jazz club.
Didn't you say that the one place that you were managing opened as doing
blues
blues?
Yeah. I wasn't managing that place. I was just kind of working with the owner, and the booking person, as a young person trying to learn as much as I could. So I wasn't involved with the day-to-day management of that place. My day-to-day management stuff at that point in time was at the theater.
Okay.
So all this other stuff was in addition to that. But that's all kind of, ancillary. Like from there, we always knew we wanted to open a venue, and after booking bands in Chicago and in San Diego, which I would call more primary markets than a place like Raleigh, the competition was getting ridiculous. Like for example, say you have a 200 cap room and the tickets have to stay at $5. All of a sudden, band guarantees are getting up to $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 just to get them. And I played that game for a little bit. And I'm like, this is no good. This is not sustainable. I can't just keep losing money.
Yeah.
For
Just
reputation points or whatever.
Yeah.
So we started looking at other cities that were a little bit smaller, and we came up with a set of parameters, like at least 350,000 people, like this type of education, semi-metropolitan type of area, and literally got in the car and drove around the country for a month and a half from Portland, Oregon, up to Portland, Maine, and down to Texas and everywhere in between. And when we came to Raleigh, first impression was like, we're pulling up and like that skyline, that has to be like a suburb of Raleigh, right? That can't be downtown.
No, that's it.
Especially
I was like, okay. So, we came in, hung out, like this, pretty cool vibe. And that night we actually went to a show at the Poorhouse. And it was the only place in the entire country where we came in, and people were like, who are you guys? Like, never seen you before. What's up? Like, and by the end of the night, we were hanging out with a dozen people, and we're at Landmark, and then we're at Slim's, and doing the circle lap that we still do to this day on that block. So it was really cool. It just felt right. In January of 2009, we packed up our stuff from San Diego and moved out here.
And so, actually, a question I had, because you had talked about theater a little bit, is that did you manage Playmakers repertory?
Yeah, I worked at Playmakers when I first moved here. So because I had experience in that world, they were hiring for a house manager at Playmakers. So applied there, got that job. Then that quickly changed into me becoming their company manager, which is managing like all the actors and the directors and set designers and all those people, making sure they get paid, they show up where they're supposed to be, getting them to and from the airport, all that type of stuff. So at that point in time, I was like getting my oil changed every 3 weeks in my car. I was living off of Capitol Boulevard in Raleigh, driving to Chapel Hill. At the same time, I was also working at the Carolina Theater in Durham, doing house managing over there for random shows. So like, drive to Chapel Hill, go back and forth to the airport twice, back to Chapel Hill, to Durham, back to Raleigh. I was like, this is getting crazy.
Yeah.
And then, my wife was working with someone at United Way at that time, and they were friends. Their mom or something was friends with the previous owner of the Poorhouse's mom.
Okay.
And they were like, we came up in conversation, like, they're trying to open a music venue. They're like, oh, really? So-and-so's has a music venue, is trying to get rid of it. It's like, oh. So, like, we made that connection, and a month later we signed a contract that I took over half of the business. And it was supposed to be like an 8-year runway for me to take over the other 50%. But after 3 years, we butted heads so damn hard that we got him out of there.
Damn.
After 3 years.
Was this like started like, I guess, 2009 or so?
I got there in 2012.
2012.
And then 2015 took over full ownership.
Interesting. So what do you guys have?
I was just gonna ask, was it like kind of a weird transition going from music venues to theater work?
Not really. It kind of helped me look at venue work in a different way. Everything in the theater is much more formal.
Right. I'm sure like the setup.
You're wearing a tie, and you have subscribers, and important donors, and people that you have to treat with like a more respect and more attention, I guess.
Kind of a different culture.
It's very different. It's much more proper. It's not loose. It's not organic. It's very structured.
Had you been involved in theater at all as a kid?
No, definitely not. I was always a music kid.
Not the theater.
I was a skateboarder, punk rock kid, and never got into theater.
Yeah.
By any stretch.
Weird. Yeah.
It was more a work opportunity that I was like, this could be a good way to look at things differently. We've toyed over the years with like different subscription ideas and memberships and things like that. Like at one point we were offering for like $100 or $150 like a year pass to the Poorhouse.
Oh,
you can come any night of the week, and we were doing 7 shows a week. I mean,
Yeah.
if you came every night, that would be a couple $1,000 in tickets by the end of the year. It's like, for $100, if you're coming every week, you might as well.
You better be buying the drinks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, theater was just kind of something to do at that time. There was a parallel that I saw between it. Same with like the record label. I remember when I got there, they're like, if you want to open a music venue, why do you want to work at a record label? And it's like, that's a good question, but at the end of the day, I feel like the more I can understand about the different aspects of an artist's career and understand the full circle that it takes to become successful as a musician, it's only going to allow me to help people succeed at their career. And that's always been our goal, is to make bands outgrow our room and move on to bigger stages, which is always bittersweet because it's a money losing proposition for the first several years when you're doing shows with 10 people show up, 20 people, 30, 50, sometimes back down to 10. And then, it's a frustrating ride for everyone along the way, but those people that are putting their noses down and grinding it out, that's who we try to put our energy behind, and so they're actually going after it and trying to become a professional musician or
you
band.
can usually tell too. So like on your little road trip, like kind of looking at all the venues, was there any like cities where you're like, this is absolutely not a place where we can be at?
Boise, Idaho.
How many people? What's the population? Was it Did it meet
It
the
was like
criteria?
250. It was another like around that time, like early mid 2000s. It was growing at kind of like the same trajectory as like Raleigh or Milwaukee or Austin or Portland, things like that. It was just a little bit more off the beaten path, and we actually never even stopped. But we drove there, and as we're approaching, it just became like shoulder to shoulder factory farm, like cows for endless miles. Just like it was just so disturbing, and the smell was wretched. And I looked.
Shout out to Boise, Idaho.
Hey, Boise.
Boise.
Lacey looked at me. She's like, "We're not stopping." I'm like, "Let's go." And then
Were your
she was
windows-
vegetarian for a couple of years after that.
Were your windows closed while you were driving through?
Yeah, they tried opening it to see if maybe we're sucking it in through the air conditioning because it was summer.
Well, you've been through Midwestern towns before. I know you're from Chicago,
Yeah.
so you've probably driven south a little bit
Oh, yeah.
in Illinois and seen the soybean farms and had the smell affront your face.
Nothing like it. I've never.
It
smelled
was
anything.
worse.
It was just like death.
You smelled
Just
blood
like
and guts somewhere.
Yeah,
It was somewhere.
and feces.
Could have been the people.
And, like,
Yeah.
No,
it's
it was
very well-
definitely like the slaughter of animals. You can smell that.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like a paper mill, but bloodier.
So a lot of what you do is like really organized, like organizing administrative quality work, right?
Yeah,
But you started this road as a musician.
yeah.
How did you gather any lessons from musicianship that you can apply to your administrative work today?
That's a good question. As a musician, timing is everything.
Yeah.
And with presenting concerts and anything in business, really, that just is essentially has a long checklist of things to do to accomplish a goal. It's essentially the same thing if you look at notes on a staff, or if you time things out, to accomplish the goal of completing this song, you have to put certain notes in certain places before or after each other in order for it to make sense and create the end goal of the song. The same thing with, really anything in life, but especially putting on concerts. Like the end goal is to put on a packed show where everyone has a great time. You figure out all the steps to get to that end goal along the way, and you just go through them. Take them one by one, break things down into little micro goals. So you got your verse, your chorus, versus like your marketing plan or your operations plan, your staffing plan, like all that stuff, and you just go through it in an order that makes the best sense to come out with the ultimate result of something memorable.
I mean, you can have the best order in the world, but the execution is still shit.
Oh yeah,
So like, I was a trumpet player for a while, and like, some of those grace notes into like 64th notes, I can theorize how to do it, but like actually doing it with the tongue work is kind of impossible for me, at least at that current level, right?
Yeah.
So I can imagine what I'm going to do before I do it, and I know what the timing needs to be, but what tips do you have in terms of execution? Like, where are the techniques coming from?
Just experience, I guess, trial and error. one thing that's always constant about this business is that it's perpetually changing, and you're always throwing a curveball. Now someone has COVID, someone's mom died, there was a car accident, there was, every couple of weeks we deal with one of these curveballs that throws a wrench into the plan. Everything, on paper can look fine and dandy, but like you said, it comes down to executing it. And it's making sure you have well, from my angle, because I'm no longer there every single night running the operations, but we've set up our people and our operations team to understand everything that they need to do and giving them all the resources that they need to make sure they're successful. So if there's some sort of weird or different hospitality thing, we need to make sure that's communicated. So, these bands aren't rolling in. They're like, "Where's our buyout? Where's this and that? Where's this? Where's our hotel room keys?" And we're all like,
Yeah, you don't want to play around. Yeah, don't want to play around.
You make that mistake once, and you learn to not do that again. And it has happened. And there's all sorts of things that just you try to set it up as set yourself up for success. But there's always going to be anomalies or curveballs that just throw you off track.
Right, and as in jazz, there are no wrong notes, right? So what do you do when something does throw you off track?
You go with it. You roll with it, and
what does that mean?
To
what does that
me,
look
one
like?
example kind of is like, or it seems like, is like if there's four bands on the bill, one band drops out, you have to have somebody ready, or like not necessarily have somebody ready, but you have from organizing.
Right,
or do you extend those three people's times and then just like, hey, listen, do you have any more songs? Can you extend the set maybe 10 minutes more? We get 10 minutes from each of you. That's 30 minutes.
That's got to be one of those things that's probably ear though.
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah, and it all depends on the type of band. Like, we could be talking about a hardcore show where their sets are 15 minutes. And you might have 5, and then all of a sudden 3 of the bands got COVID, and now you've got 30 minutes of music, and you're charging a $15 ticket. It's like, and this is happening 5 o'clock on the day of the show. Doors open in 2 hours, say. It's like we either drop the price down and change like the splits between these two bands. We scramble and try to find some other bands that can hop on last minute that in reality doing that, they're probably not going to bring any other people out because they haven't had time to promote to their fan base and let them know that, hey, we're playing in 30 minutes if you can make it. Like, I know you live an hour away, but I don't know if you can be there. We'll play from 8 to 8:15. Like, so, on a day-by-day basis, based on the genre, based on the people that you're working with, coming up with a solution that makes the best sense for everybody involved. If it's a touring band, say, that's coming through, it's their first time in the market, and all of a sudden we don't have local support anymore because something happened, in that scenario, it's always in the best interest to just get somebody else on there. So, because when you're introducing a band to the market for the first time, nobody knows who they are, so it's hard to convince people to be like, hey, can you come spend your time and money on something you've never heard before on Tuesday night? It'll happen at 9:30. And it's a tough sell. So if we can make sure, like in those scenarios, that we scramble and get somebody on there that could send, an Instagram post out or text some friends, and all of a sudden there's at least a dozen people there that are showing up, that's better than nothing. We've always been of the mind that it's better to put on a show and everybody's making a couple bucks versus like sitting dark and not having anything going on. But yeah, I mean,
it's an incredibly noble pursuit. It's a public service to put on these types of shows, right? In ancient Rome, this was the only way that the masses could come together, socialize, and not feel upset that the government was doing what they were doing. Mm-hmm. It's a way for us to express our individualism together.
Yeah, totally. And you see it all the time. Like the first show I ever put in that room was Snarky Puppy. It was like 3 weeks after I took over the poorhouse. It was a Tuesday night. We had been dead every Tuesday up until that point, and all of a sudden like 200 people showed up. Oh, and shit. There was hip hop heads, there was jazz guys, there was rockers, there was metal heads, there was hippie chicks. There was a very diverse crowd of people, and like that night sums up perfectly like what our intention has always been and how we want this space to work and how we want the community to interact within the space. But like we had hip hop guys up front hula hooping with the hippie chicks, and like the jazz guys that are usually pondering and listening to all the notes and holding on to every word or headbanging up front, and the rocker guys are acting like the jazz guys, like pondering, like, holy shit, what's going on here? It was a beautiful, beautiful, magical night that just the whole room was goosebump energy, and you could tell everybody just like everyone came in, just another night, what up? And then by the time everyone left, there was nothing but smiles on everyone's faces, and people that you wouldn't expect to be hanging out together it was beautiful. If only every night could be like that.
Yeah. One thing about the space and the organization that I've been thinking about is I've heard like a lot of great things and have been to Poorhouse and seen great things in terms of the sound within the venue. Maybe talk a little bit about the work that you've done, because I've actually heard you've been hands-on in like improving the sound quality for live shows in the venue during the time that you've been there.
Yeah. So kind of like a quick background of like how music evolved at the Poorhouse. It opened in 1997. It's just like a bar downtown that had 30 drafts. That type of business didn't exist at the time. One day you used to enter like where the stage is now through that center glass door that everyone thinks is the main entrance. You would actually come through there and there was no stage there. There was like 40 couches downstairs, 4 pool tables upstairs, more couches.
Jeez. So it was more a bar.
It was a bar to start
Pool
with.
bar. It was a pool bar.
Yeah, and then within the first year, they had put a band in the corner, and it worked. And then a corner stage was built quickly, and then within a year or two after that, like the current configuration got built out with just kind of patchwork, sound quality and equipment and all that stuff. It wasn't the best. But we had good people working. Jack Kane's been with us for close to 20 years at this point, if not 20 years. And he's an incredible sound engineer. Everyone that works for us, he's taught them everything that they know. He's trained countless people, is the go-to guy for advice when it comes to sound in the region. Touring musicians worldwide speak very, very highly of him. And you go anywhere in the country and talk about the Poorhouse, and if someone knows the Poorhouse and they're a musician, their first question to you is 99% of the time, is Jack still there? So he's great, and he's the main person behind the sound system sounding so good. It's not like we have the highest quality equipment that you could go. I mean, you can get crazy with sound equipment, and the shape of our room is a little odd, and traditionally that shape room would be hard to make sound well. But we've made it work with how we have things set up. We've replaced all of our speakers and our amps and snakes and soundboard over the years. So we're on a Midas M32 console and the digital snake that goes with that. We've got some other drop snakes around the stage, so we just kind of keep adding more and more as time goes on. There used to always be a complaint from people like that were down front center, like right in front of the singer, saying that they can't hear the vocals. It's like, yes, look at where the speakers are. Speakers for the range like this. You're standing in a spot where those speakers aren't getting to you. You're getting stage volume. And we're like, well, let's add another center fill straight down on there. So we did that, and like we haven't had that complaint in 5 years probably. And we've got mic setups for recording easily, and brought projectors and stuff in. We've just bought a bunch of new lights, so we're going to be redoing our lighting system and have a couple Wiggly Boys up there to make it maybe a little bit more feasible to do some electronic music. Electronic music in a static light environment isn't the best.
So has this been something, I guess, like a lot of these changes, I don't know if this was part of some of the point of contention when maybe you took over, or if it was already kind of, I mean, some of the changes kind of predated you being there, but it sounds like a lot of updates.
Yeah, I mean, it was in a state of maintaining.
Yeah.
There was not a culture of improvement by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, I mean, the fan experience was like the first thing that I talked to the staff when I met them in 2012, which was very weird, walking into that type of situation. But I never in a million years thought I would be taking over an existing venue. I was always planning on starting one from scratch. So shifting into that mindset of like, okay, I'm taking over something that's already running. There's people that have been here for a decade. Like, I've got to figure this out. I've never done this before. But I talked about what my intentions were and how we were going to go forward and making those intentions turn into a reality, and everyone seemed on board, and kept that staff for several years. One of the people that was there at that point, Nick, who started out as a fill-in door guy, is now a co-owner of the Poorhouse as of the beginning of this year. We try to treat everyone with respect, and at the end of the day, keep the focus that the Poorhouse is a place for people to go and have fun and cut loose and forget about all the bullshit that they deal with throughout life and every day. So all of our actions, our improvements, our intentions, our bookings, our marketing, everything is intended to bring joy.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to the experience part that Jack's talked about and we've kind of tangentially talked on. What is the kind of experience, kind of room that you have sought to cultivate, or that you want the Poorhouse to be, essentially, in terms of the culture of it, I guess?
Yeah, I feel like we're going in the right direction. With the programming that we do basically all styles of music. My goal is to try to bridge the gap between the crowds of different styles of music. You always have people that say, I like everything except this or this. It's like, okay, well, I would love to see you at a hip hop show. I would love to see you at a punk show. I would love to see you at all these other shows that aren't electronic or bro country. Those are the two things you told me you don't like. We do everything else besides those two things right now.
One thing that I've noticed is kind of some of the hip hop that's been, I say, some of the better shows I see at the Poorhouse on hip hop end tend to almost mix the punk and hip hop. Juice Lord is one that comes to example, artist name. I guess, do you see that kind of hip hop flourishing more in the room, or do you think or a wider range?
Yeah, no, I think it's an ethos thing and it's an attitude thing that punk rock and hip hop overlap.
Yeah,
they're parallel cultures, and I think mixed genre shows are awesome. We did one a while back with Lil Ugly Mane and some punk bands, and it was fucking wild. It was awesome. Just like Juice Lord too. We love his shows. We got him playing with Vacant Company coming up in June, and maybe the Muslims on that
Nice.
show. But the energy is the same. We had Juice Lord on a New Year's show a couple years ago. Were you guys around for the Kosher Hut years?
I came back more 2020. So
okay. Yeah. So there was a house venue over by, kind of over by NC State. It was called the Kosher Hut. And the parties were fucking awesome and wild, and it was very much around the psych punk, post rock type music. But the parties were awesome. It was the types of shows that you imagine how shows should be, watching movies growing up, of things like that. It's just it was it was like a fantasy land. It manifested, and they did a great job with it over there. But for New Year's one year, we did a revenge or a revival of the Kosher Hut and had a bunch of the Kosher Hut bands on there. But we had a Juice Lord who had never played it, but he lined up perfectly with it, and he was the only hip hop act on that show. But it worked great. People loved it, and we got introduced to a bunch of music fans that would have normally not seen him, and now you still to these days see those people showing up at his shows, which is the goal here. Yeah.
One I guess kind of brought up the New Year's. I was at the Arson Daily New Year's show. I guess 2021 bringing in 22.
Yeah.
Not asking about that particular show, but I know they wanted to get it it's in the process, I guess, of being printed on vinyl.
Yeah, I talked to Zach about that yesterday because that one's kind of stalled out. But the first one we're pressing is Juice Lord's.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And Vacant Company and Pie Face Girls, 2LP, and then Bumpin' Uglies, which is a reggae band. But Arson Daily we recorded, but they're not super happy with how
the sound, I guess,
how it came out.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do some mixing magic to see if we can get it to a point that everyone's happy with it, and if it is, we'll go forward with that one. But it's kind of in the band's hands right now to decide if they want to do it or they don't.
And so I guess that kind of leads us into some of the like poorhouse pressing talk we can get to.
Yeah.
I don't know if Lucas seemed like you might want to.
Yeah, no, like how did that come to fruition?
So we had started talking about this probably 7 or 8 years ago. And the conversation started with, the idea used to be able to leave a show and get a CD copy or a jump drive copy of the mix from that night and go home and you play it in your car or whatever. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could make like a couple records a night and like, in real time cut 2 or 3 records each night that a couple people could lead with of that show. It never gets remade. You get a small lathe and, it started off with that and, no real action came of it. And then, the more we started seeing that there was this huge backlog of demand for pressing plants, well, I guess let me back up a little bit. We started doing the live at the Poorhouse recordings, and then and we opened the record shop too. And at that time, we're buying records every week from distributors, and half of the ones coming in, 3/4 of them coming in, say made in Portugal, made in the Netherlands, made in Germany, made in France, and like very rarely were you seeing any produced domestically. And we started diving into it more. Be like, well, shit, there is like a massive backlog, and comes to find out like worldwide demand for this last year was 500 million units, and global capacity is 250. So there's a huge gap. All the legacy machines that were built up until the early 80s, you can't find those anymore. They're either at pressing plants and backstock people using for parts. All the ones hidden in the jungle in Costa Rica have all been unearthed and cannibalized. So there's a small handful, 3 companies that are making new presses. We got presses from a company in Canada called Viral Technologies, and we put our deposit down with them in January of last year. So it's about an 18-month lead time for us to get the machines. So I mean, once we I kind of got ahead of myself there for a second, but once we started realizing what the demand was, is when we really started looking more seriously at like how can we help alleviate this problem. We've got, and the main issue is coming down to the independent bands, because there was the whole Adele thing where she bought up 500 million copies and it bogged down the industry. Like
she bought a whole year's worth of all the copies.
Yeah, dude.
Right, exactly.
There's like some
now you
places
can find them
that
for
just
like 5 cents in like
there's some at like Target. They were giving them out for free at
Her own
Target.
albums?
What's that?
Her own albums?
Yeah, like brand new pressings. They're
Why-
people
why?
just giving.
Well, it was
way
for
too
new
many.
record, and like we always sell Adele in our record shop. Like anytime we get it, it just goes out the door. So like, we'll get 30 of this new record, and it wasn't a good record. That's what didn't sell.
Yeah,
Damn.
that was the
She just
problem.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
we
I
finally
remember
sold
there's-
the last copy that we bought like a couple weeks ago.
Just kept marking them.
Yeah, I think I was at like Nice Price, and they just had like the dude was just like, "Yo, dude." I was like about to leave, and he was like, "Do you want some?"
I won't
Adele?"
get an Adele.
I was like, "No, I'm good, dude. I don't need those."
So did you guys have to find a new, I guess like finding the physical space for the printing? How was that?
Yeah, that was tough because this business falls into the industrial manufacturing category for building codes, and this area does not have a big history of manufacturing. So the number of spaces that are available are extremely limited. They're either like 3,000 feet or 50,000 feet or 100,000 feet. And for what we're doing, we're starting with 2 presses, and you need about 1,000 feet of operational square footage per press with all like storage of PVC and record jackets and assembly and all that stuff. So we were planning on building out for more than what we're starting with. So the space we found is 7,200 feet. We're starting with the 2 presses, but we're building out for 6. So our infrastructure, we've built it in such a way with our boiler and our chiller system and our loops and our power and all of that, our water tanks. Everything is sized and already set. So in the future, when we are ready to add additional machines, we don't have to stop production, start construction, go through that whole process while we're not manufacturing. We can come and just drop those components in place, like the boiler's pre-wired and pre-piped, so like set them next to each other, add another pipe in between them, they're connected, now it's live. So we're very phonetic about that to make sure that it was a little bit more of an investment up front, but down the road as we expand and add those extra presses, the amount of money that we'll save by not having to, not make records for a month.
Yeah.
While we do all that stuff,
Makes
you
it
can crank out a
worthwhile.
lot of records in a month.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, well, in terms of the, I moved and I lost my thought for a second. But let me get it back. With that space, I guess, did you learn or did you know at all, like, in terms of the process of it, in terms of manufacturing records, or did you kind of learn as you were going, or like how? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been learning as I go. There's
staffing
there's
that.
like 42 pressing plants in the country. Like, it's not something that very many people at all have experience with. And just as much research as you can, and learning about the different processes, learning about mechanics and electricity and pressure and things of that nature has helped me understand a lot more of what's going on a micro level with all these systems, because it's not just the presses to make it work. We've got this huge boiler system that's longer than this room. We've got a chiller that's 9 by 12. It looks like a huge air conditioner, but we got two 400-gallon water tanks that run through the thing to make sure our water temperature is staying exactly at 55 degrees, and this huge fire-powered boiler to make sure that we're getting steam at the right temperature to melt PVC down. So really, it's all the systems surrounding and feeding the presses are really what largely dictate the quality of record that you're going to be able to put out.
Were you able to visit any of those other places, like stage for a couple days, just see how it
Yeah,
goes?
totally. Yeah, we spent some time at Smash Plastic in Chicago. That new plant, I'm flaking on their name right now, that new plant that just opened in Nashville a couple of years ago. And been talking to other people from other plants. We went to this Making Vinyl conference last year and met a ton of great people, and everyone in the industry has been extremely helpful and willing to share knowledge and help people fill this demand. You visit different record pressing plants' websites and you see lots of messages saying, sorry, we're not taking orders anymore for the rest of this year. And it's April. So there's a huge backlog. So everyone's happy to see more records get out in the world, especially for independent artists that are struggling to get, their 300 records pressed or their 500 records pressed, or even, the 100 records that they want pressed. And people have been extremely helpful. They're answering questions. I'll send an email or a text and get an answer right back. They're like, please just keep firing away, because what I've learned, the majority of the people that are running these places, none of them have any record pressing experience before they did it. Everyone's coming from different backgrounds, and some in music, some not in music. But it's been really cool. It's very similar to the music venues where we work together and try to help each other to make sure that there's as much great live music out there. It's kind of the same mentality on the pressing side, at least that we've experienced so far. That everyone just wants to see great music and independent music get out there as much as they can.
So I was curious your standpoint on like the consumerism of physical music and stuff, because I mean it's pretty evident that digital music is everyone's main source usually. So you keep saying the demand is there. Do you think there's this shift from going from digital back to physical maybe? Or
I don't. I think they work in tandem. I think digital has its time and place. I use digital more than I listen to records on a day-to-day basis, but it's a different experience. It's being able to, pick exactly what you want at any given point in time, given your mood, or sitting down and listening to an entire piece of art all the way through from front to beginning or front to end, and dedicating that time to doing that rather than it just being background noise. Because if you're just having it be background noise, in my opinion, just turn on digital. You don't have to worry about the 12 minutes from now the
change.
the flipping it over,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. But so I think something we've especially seen with just the record shop, we're seeing a lot of people that are younger coming in, under 25, kids that are 15, 12, kids that are like 8 with their parents. It's awesome. But I think there's been we got an entire generation that grew up without, they always had instant access to this song or that video or this or that. It was always,
They had an iPad when they were 5.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, my 3-year-old is finding filters and stuff on my phone that I didn't know existed. And like new functions and figure out how to make my watch, call 911 if I fall too hard. Like, I'm like, how did you do that? But there's a huge portion of this younger generation that is buying records and sitting down and appreciating a work of art all the way through, which is something that got vastly lost in the introduction of the digital age. I mean, I was part of it. I was born in the early 80s, and I grew up without the internet, and then it came, and then it dominated, and then it got to a point where, like, well, no more tapes, well, no more CDs. All right, I got this little MP3 player, and can hold 50 songs. Now I got this one. This can hold 200. Now I got an iPod, and that became the thing, and the necessity of having something physical disappeared, and I think the lack of it in mainstream culture over the years has been missing and is coming back because people enjoy the experience. If something's enjoyable, it's enjoyable. I mean, I don't really know the proper answer to that, but
there is no proper
there's
answer.
no answer.
Yeah.
I just wanted you
Yeah.
to go on for a little bit, but yeah, because I always think about that too.
Yeah, and from an artist standpoint, the goal is always to release digital, vinyl, and everything all at the same time, which has been extremely difficult the last 3 years because of the delays. A lot of pressing plants are 8 to 12 months behind to get a record pressed.
Yeah, it's
And,
like,
if people are trying to put out, a record a year, or maybe even faster, like, okay, I've got these songs ready to go. I can put them out on digital now, and then a year from now, I could put it out on vinyl. It's less of an impact. Creates less of a buzz for
you're not going to
the
hold
pushing of the product overall.
You're not going to hold that album for 18 months.
Exactly. So then they're faced with the decision to be like, the perfect plan that we had ready to go administratively that looked perfect on paper. It's not going to work now unless we hold on to this. Maybe those songs might be irrelevant at that point in time, and there's something you reference in your songs that doesn't sit well currently with what's going on in the world, and it's like, oh shit, now I need to scrap this. Like, a million things can happen that you just...
Everybody in 2019.
Everyone has to make the decision that whatever's best for them.
One thing you mentioned, the first 3 printings, Juice Lord, Vacant Company, and Pie Face Girls.
Yeah.
I guess that tends towards like local printings. Is that going to be the focus at the primary, like at the beginning with like two prints essentially? Are you gonna is the beginning mainly going to be local artists, I guess?
So far it's been a mix. We just officially announced that we're doing this last month, and we finally just finished building our back-end system for managing everything from orders all the way through shipping and manufacturing. So that's ready to roll now, and we're taking orders now. We've got probably 60, I'd say.
You're almost putting up a no till next year sign.
No.
No.
Not quite. But I'd say like 70% of those are North Carolina local.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then I guess some people have kind of just reached out seeing, oh, there's another record printing plant. Let's print something. We can't get anybody else. Like, we need to get some stuff.
Yeah. So we're doing our first like big push out to we've got a list of record labels and bands like that we've worked with over the years that we're going to send our price sheet out and stuff to a week from Monday. We were planning on doing it Monday, but we're going to Shikori on Thursday.
Nice.
And we'll be unplugged. So it didn't feel right to send that out and then put an out of office reply on 3 days later. So we're going to wait till we get back from Shikori, send it out to everyone, and we'll see how it starts rolling in. But it's basically been word of mouth. We had that one Visit Raleigh article, which isn't the most wide-reaching publication. It's great. Love David Menconi, but it hasn't really reached out to the wider industry. So like each day I'm in the process of handing over the booking reins to our new talent buyer, Jonas, who's been doing a wonderful job.
Yeah.
But like each of those conversation handoffs, like Jonas is your go-to person now, like because I'm going to focus on this. And then they're like, oh shit, well send me your price sheet because we've got 50 bands, like we've got 100 bands on our roster. And so we anticipate it in the next couple of weeks to start snowballing and probably fill up the rest of the year of production pretty quickly.
Nice. With Jonas, or with the I guess transition talent buyer wise, moving out of that role a little bit. I guess, do you expect that to change at all? The bands that are coming in, or do you guys have a pretty similar eye, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure things will change a bit.
Yeah.
I think Jonas and I both think very similarly when it comes to programming, and I've explained like kind of my philosophy to him on how I approach things and why, and who we continue to work with versus who we don't continue to work with, and that really comes down to like, I don't care that 2 people showed up to your show. Like, did you come and play that show for those 2 people, or did you complain between every song that there was no one there? It's like, we don't want to encourage that. We're not going to ask that band back.
Yeah.
But the one that just rocked the fuck out and had a great time with those 2 people, you know, we'll keep working with people.
That's kind
like
of the
that.
beautiful thing. Like a beautiful thing for me about the Poorhouse is like sometimes, just because it's a Wednesday night, you might have a great band on there that is 5 people in the house, but then randomly 100 people might roll down the road and come in.
Yeah.
It's kind of a beautiful thing. I mean, like, in terms of being in that downtown location.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect spot, honestly, for foot traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's nice about a market like Raleigh, because you know the larger bands are trying to make their way to New York, DC, Atlanta, you know, these bigger markets on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get the most bang for their buck if they're playing headlining shows in New York on a Saturday versus Raleigh.
Yeah.
So we get the benefit of getting awesome shows on Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Wednesday.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of Wednesday,
Like-
Thursday, great shows.
Like all
I'd
of
say.
April, like almost every Monday in April sold out.
Yeah.
It was fucking awesome. Like Church of the Cosmic Skull, if you haven't heard of them, check them out. They're awesome. From the UK. It's like if the Beatles and Black Sabbath had a baby. Like, beautiful. Yeah, that was the first Monday in April. That sold out. Then we had the Queers playing the next week. And Bongzilla this last week. Or not. What was this last week?
Is tomorrow the first Monday in April?
Onyx was the last one. Onyx played last Monday. But yeah, like that's what's cool about you know weekends are weekends. Everyone wants a weekend date, but when you can have sold out Monday nights when it's like crickets downtown and people someone randomly comes down the street and walks and
Because you hear that.
like what's
You
going
hear
on here tonight? Like Onyx is here. They're like slam, like let the boys be boys. Onyx, like yeah, like they're like oh shit, and they come in and there's 300 people in there just rocking the fuck out. It's like that's awesome. Like,
Hell yeah.
love it. I
And
love
right
big
next to-
weekday shows.
Right next to Brewery Bavana.
Yeah, yeah. Right next to those guys.
Yeah. What's some of the last couple records you've been spinning?
What have I been listening to recently? Well, we just got what was it? A Bluey record from Record Store Day for my 3-year-old was been spinning that.
Nice.
Baby Shark. Of course.
Oh, you got Baby Shark on vinyl.
Oh yeah, picture discs. Yeah.
Wow.
But I've been listening to there's this compilation series called Soul Slabs. Really cool collection of like old funky music, usually put out as singles, but these are compilations of them, whether it's new or old. Like a lot of bands from Coal Mine Records and really cool funky stuff. Jazz Dispensary series that comes out. The one that just came out for Record Store Day was like kind of like French jazz, back alley sounding, really cool psychedelic music. This band Kikagaku Moyo from Japan, I think they're officially done touring now, but incredible psych rock. With some of these shows coming up, like we've got Souls of Mischief coming back
Yeah, I
for
saw
their
that.
93 till Infinity 30-year anniversary. So I've been diving back into that album, and Onyx was just
Good
here,
one.
so I dove back into some of that hip hop. But yeah, my tastes are all over the place. I listen to a lot of jazz, a lot of Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk,
There's actually
Coltrane.
I was listening to something yesterday. MEB and Miles Davis, like it was like kind of like a hip hop over Miles Davis jazz
cool.
tracks. Pretty cool. A lot of sampling. Some
I've
actually
seen,
gonna tell you
I've
about
seen
it.
the DJ Premier like jazz album. You ever listen to Azimute?
Mm-mm.
It's like Brazilian, almost bossa nova. Not quite bossa nova, but it's like Brazilian jazz.
What's the name again?
Azimute. It's
Azimute.
like AZYMUTH.
Yeah, so I'm very familiar with Os Mutantes from Brazil. And we had them at the Poorhouse, and like I lost my shit because they've been one of my favorite bands forever. And got the phone call about that, and like ran around my house screaming
That's
for like
awesome.
2 hours, like, oh my god, I got my god.
I don't know how like familiar you are with Shikori, but are you familiar with I can't remember his name right now, but there's one Hispanic jazz. There's pretty much just one jazz.
Tumbao. What are
I
they?
think so.
Diego.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, they played the
Hispanic.
Poorhouse last night.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm always excited to see them when I go to Shikori because it's like all these like heady and like bluegrass and then like moshing and then like
And then some Latin.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. I love it.
Yeah, no, they're killer players. I love that band. They're doing a really good job.
It's phenomenal, upright.
Well, I was gonna only add, like we're on record, so about the record shop, in terms of filling the crates, really. In terms like, what's the approach to how you guys how you cultivate that?
Yeah, so we put out 160 titles every week on Friday. We try to have about 60 or so brand new titles, or represses or re-releases, things that are just new from a distributor, and the rest is used, that we go through and grade every record individually. And we try to keep a wide variety. So, our bread and butter up there, which I think any record shop can attest to, is classic rock. That's always going to be the best-selling genre out there. But we stock, local bands, hip hop, jazz,
You guys have
folk,
Baby
world,
Shark?
country. Not anymore.
Just have one
Some things
copy.
just don't stay in the bins very long.
Yeah, do you know if you guys have anything right now?
I think I'm parched.
I mean, I guess, just any shout outs. We can go through like any sort of shout outs or anything.
Any upcoming events?
Oh, my brain is so deep into the pressing plant. I'm not very current on our calendar, but we do have a ton of good stuff coming up. Just keep an eye on our social media and our calendar. We update it almost every day with new shows. We've got a cool just announced section now to make it easier to see the things that are just announced in the last couple days. But yeah, if you're interested in getting records made, I'm not the person to talk to. I'm going to be running the production side of things. So the number of people I have to communicate is going to drastically decrease, which I'm very much looking forward to. But Lacey will be the person to get in touch with. Lacey at poorhousepressing.com. Hit her up and she can send you a price sheet and get you a quote together probably within 24 hours. We're taking jobs now and we're expecting production to kick off early August. And keep an eye out for cool things that we're going to do around Hopscotch over there and Record Store Day. We'll do plant tours and things like that, and let some people from the community come to get their hands on the machines and actually make records themselves too.
Yeah, it's all at the hot. So you guys kind of already announced that there'll be some Hopscotch shows, which last year were great.
Yeah.
That was honestly one of my favorite parts of Hopscotch last year that wasn't there the year before. I think the best part, really, honestly.
Yeah, the last couple of years have been weird, so this year with Hopscotch it'll kind of go back to quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Hopscotch is always a beautiful time of the year.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you coming by. Really, the only thing, I like to take a Polaroid at the end. So if you're
Yeah.